This is for educational use only. Our group grants permission for our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as educational material.
Good day everyone. Our group will be presenting about global population and demography, focusing on the theory of demographic transition and how it affects global population trends. So before we go into the theory itself, we'll first understand what population and demography mean, how they are related, and why studying them is so important in our world today. So first and foremost, population is one of the most vital aspects of human existence. It affects everything: our economy, environment, and even politics. Understanding how and why population change helps us prepare for future challenges like overpopulation, food shortages, or aging societies. So let's begin by defining our key terms.
Let's start with the term population. Population refers to the total of number of people living in a specific area or region at a given time. For example, as of 2025, the world's population has reached more than 8 billion people, with countries like China or India being the most populated. Population can be studied by size, density, and distribution, meaning we can look at how many people live in one place, how crowded it is, and how they are spread out.
Meanwhile, demography is the scientific study of human populations, focusing on aspects such as birth rates, death rates, age structure, migration, and population growth. Demography helps researchers, economists, and governments understand how populations behave and change over time. It answers questions like, why are some countries growing rapidly while others are shrinking? How do migration and fertility affect a country's future? What happens when the elderly population grows faster than the youth? So in short, demography is not just about counting people. It's about studying the patterns, causes, and consequences of population change.
So, let's proceed. The population and demography are about understanding human society through numbers and trends. So, population and demography, they help us predict the future changes and plans for sustainable development. For example, if demographers notice that a country's birth rate is declining, it could mean that in the future, there might be fewer workers support the economy. On the other hand, a high population growth rate might cause overcrowding, unemployment, and environmental degradation. So, demography also studies population's compositions, the distribution of people by age, gender, occupation, and education. So, this information is essential for making national plans like building controls, schools, hospitals, and transformation system.
Demography also plays a key role in addressing global issues like migration, urbanization, and aging. For instance, when people move from rural areas to cities, populations become concentrated in urban centers. This affects housing, food supply, and even population level. By studying demographic trends, governments can create effective policies that respond to these changes. So, population and demography are not just academic topics. They are essential tools for decision-making and sustainable growth. Transition to the main topic, the theory of demography transition.
Now that we understand what population and demography means, let's move to the heart of our topic, the theory of demographic transition. This theory was first developed by demographers such as Warren Thompson and Frank Notenstein in early 20th centuries. It explains how populations change over time as societies develop economically, socially, and technologically. The theory shows that every country goes through series of stages from high birth and death rates to low birth and death rates as it transitions from rural agricultural society to a modern and industrialized one. The demographic transition is usually divided into 4 stages, though some experts have added a 5th. Let's explore each stages in details.
The first stage is called the pre-industrial stage. In this stage, both birth rates and death rates are very high. This happens because there is limited access to healthcare, for sanitation, and frequent outbreaks of disease. Families have many children because child mortality is high, and children are needed to help with farming and household work. However, since both births and death rates are high, the population grows very slowly or remains stable. For example, Europe before the 18th century or ancient civilizations were in this stage, where life expectancy was short and survival was uncertain.
In the second stage, known as the transitional stage, major improvements in healthcare, sanitation, and food production begin to reduce the death rate. People live longer lives, but birth rates remain high because cultural beliefs and traditions still favor large families. So as a result, population growth increases rapidly. This is often referred to as the population explosion stage. Many developing countries like parts of Africa and South Asia experienced this phase during the mid-20th century, when medical advances lowered death rates but birth rates stayed high.
The third stage is called the industrial stage. During this period, birth rates begin to decline as countries become more urbanized and industrialized. Families move from farm to cities where living costs are higher and fewer children are needed to work. People gain better access to education, employment, and family planning. Women also start joining the workforce, which leads to smaller families and delayed marriages. Population growth begins to slow down as the gap between birth and death rates narrows. Countries like Mexico, Brazil, and Philippines are moving through this stage today.
Next, we have the 4th stage, the post-industrial stage. In this stage, both birth rates and death rates are low, leading to a stable or slow-growing population. People now focus on quality of life, career advancement, and personal fulfillment rather than having many children. Developed countries such as Japan, Germany, and South Korea are examples of nations in this stage. However, one challenge faced in this stage is population aging, where the elderly population grows larger than the young, leading to a labor shortages and increased demand for healthcare and social services.
So, some demographers add a 5th stage, known as a declining stage. So, here our birth rates drop below death rates, causing the total population to shrink over the time. So, this happens when couple choose to have fewer or no children, often due to high living costs, career priorities, and lifestyle changes. So, countries like Japan, Italy, and some sort of Eastern Europe are already experiencing these trends. So, this decline creates economic challenges, fewer workers, slower economic growth, and an increased burden of a younger generation to support the elderly. How the TORV affects global population.
The demographic transition theory helps us understand why population growth differs across the world. Developed countries have already passed through most of the stages, while many developing countries are still in stage 2 or 3, where growth is rapid. These countries are global balance. Some regions are struggling with overpopulation while others facing population decline. For instance, Africa's population is growing rapidly, putting pressure on education, food supply, and healthcare. Meanwhile, Europe and East Asia are facing labor shortage due to declining birth rates.
Understanding the demographic transition helps governments and organizations plan for the future. It helps identify what policies are needed, whether it's promoting family planning, improving education, and supporting aging populations. Say for example, in countries with a rapid growth, family planning and education programs are important. Another example, in countries with low birth rates, incentives for every families to have children might be necessary. So, the theory is not just academic, it is a guide for sustainable development and human welfare.
To sum it all up, population and demography help us understand how human societies change over time. The theory of demographic transition explains how countries move from high birth and death rates to low ones as they develop. Each stage reflects a transformation from primitive agricultural societies to advanced industrialized nations. And by studying these transitions, we can predict global population trends and prepare for future challenges.